Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, aloha and good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in on this Monday morning, the first Monday of May. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, live in Los Angeles with the University of Hawaii men's volleyball team as they compete in the national championship. Yunji Denise, of course, is back home in Honolulu. And Yunji, this morning we are focusing on tourism in our islands.
That's right. And our interview is well timed because the person who is our guest today actually is featured prominently in two articles in the paper talking about Waikiki and some of the challenges in that neighborhood. We're joined this morning by Mufi Hannemann, President and CEO of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association. Thanks for being here.
Monday.
We can never get through an interview without a song. And why don't we start with one, right?
Good to be with you.
It's good to see you. Let's talk about those articles that are in the paper today, talking about some of the challenges when it comes to Waikiki and crime. What are your concerns about what we've seen in the last few weeks?
Well, we're definitely seeing, in fact, from the beginning of the year, an increase in crime in Waikiki. Both crimes that have been filed with police reports on violent crimes since the beginning of the year. We've had nearly 431 police reports on violent crimes, and property crimes in the month of April was also about 550. So definitely crime is on the increase, and it's a natural occurrence, if you will, whenever visitors start to come back. The folks that are into these type of heinous crimes and the like will go congregate and will go to where they feel that there can be preying on victims and the like. And that's exactly what has happened, which is why we have called to bring together the important stakeholders, the prosecutor's office, the police department, and the Blangiardi administration to work with us. We've had an ongoing coalition that we've had over the past several years. Whenever we detect something that needs attention on a collaborative basis, made up of our organization, HLTA, the Waikiki Improvement Association, the Waikiki Business Improvement District, Hawaii Hotel Visitor Industry Security Association, and the BASH that's headed up by Jessica Lonnie Rich, and other business sectors. And so this is an attempt for us to just not talk about the problem or just be content that we can have government solve all our problems. We want to be part of the solution. And that's this attempt that we're going to do here. We're really interested in what a program is called the Weed and Seed Program, which has worked very well throughout the years in these potential hotspots or places where crime is occurring and congregating. Blangiardi administration and Prosecutor Alm have instituted that in Chinatown. They've had an amazing success record there. And so we're anxious to see this particular initiative come to Waikiki. We understand they may have to go and shore up some of the efforts done in the past in Ewa and the Waipahu area, but sooner rather than later, we'd like to see it come into Waikiki.
You know, we've had Prosecutor on this program and talked specifically about some of the things that are happening in Waikiki and expanding that program to Waikiki. And one of the things that he said is that they were going to look over time at some of the data to ensure that this is not an isolated instance, that this is something that continues to be a problem. But also, he noted that there was a lot that needs to be done on the seed side, that, of course, they can weed and they can continue to beef up enforcement, but it's going to also rely on the seeding aspect of it. What are your thoughts about how to implement something of this large scale to ensure its success with these partners that you mentioned?
Well, I have some history with this because when I was mayor, we did weed and seed in Waipahu and Ewa and so forth. So with that kind of background and the fact that our business owners, our residents, strong support from the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, our business owners, the folks that work in and around Waikiki, we all want to come together and figure out what's the best way to seed these programs. One of the groups that I'd like to engage very early on, and we've already talked to her, is Debbie Spencer Chun's group, with the Adult Friends for Youth. They definitely have to be a part of it. And then we'd like to reach out to the surrounding schools in this area here, find out what we can do on a proactive basis and not just be reactive about it. So we understand that Prosecutor Alm has a process, but we also feel that we don't have to study the problem. It exists. It's not a one-time situation. It's going to occur. Those of us who've been in and around the visitor industry know that this is an occurrence. That ever visitor arrivals start to increase, crime also parallels that growth. So we want to get out in front of it, and we certainly want to work with them, work with the Blangiardi administration, work with the Honolulu Police Department. We know that HPD, through one of their key majors, has said he welcomes weed and seed into Waikiki. So this is where we'd like for all of this to go. And if we can be helpful to prosecutor and his office to ensure that there's a program that he knows that once it's out there, with his neck out on the line to ensure to be success, we want to make him successful, because ultimately at the end of the day, it'll benefit residents, visitors, and workers in and around Waikiki. And let's keep this in mind. You know, Waikiki is such a big area in terms of its magnitude with respect to whatever happens with tourism and the like. If we make a major improvement, we make a major dent in the increase in crimes that we see here, then that sends a message out to the rest of the state, because we've also heard that it's also on the increase in places like Maui. Property crime is going up there. Burglaries are going up there. And again, it parallels the growth in visitors. So we kind of want to see a coordinated effort at the state level, perhaps replicating what we're doing on a very proactive basis here in what is always considered our crown jewel, 2 square miles here on Oahu, where thousands of people work, live, and play every day.
You know, you mentioned HPD, and I'm interested to know what your conversations have been like with that agency, given their shortage of police officers. Shopo's been on this program and said that there just aren't enough beat cops, basically, to patrol all the neighborhoods. I wonder if you see that in Waikiki, and what impact you think the officer shortage is contributing to this issue.
Well, NRO Chief the police chief has really done a wonderful job in dialoguing with us. We understand. I know that all too well about police staffing shortages and the like. And that's why on a community basis, if we can step up what we're doing here to help, we have a wonderful program, our ambassadors program that's run by the Waikiki Business Improvement District. If we can get the citizens to participate more, to be the eyes and ears, what have you, whatever that we can do to shore up that deficiency, because that decision is outside of our purview. That really is a budgetary issue with the council, with the mayor's office, and then ultimately for the HPD to be able to have a process that goes through, and as they train these officers and they're ready to step into the ranks there, we're not going to lose them, or we lose them after a year or so and they go elsewhere. So it's an ongoing challenge, and we understand that. But I've always said the biggest priority in any municipal budget should be public safety. If that is followed, then certainly the excess revenues now that they're starting to receive at the county and state level, because tourism numbers are coming back, which means more money is going to the GET, more TAT is collected. We have no problem if those monies are set aside because they have a strong nexus to the hospitality industry to hire more police officers.
What do you think overall that this may also do to the impact of just marketing Hawaii as not only a tourist destination, but a safe one at that? You know, whenever there are these headlines that come out there, some of it making national news that people may see, how do you think this may impact the overall marketing strategy of marketing Hawaii to visitors that may be trying to come to Hawaii and ensuring a safe visit?
Ryan, that's an excellent point. Pre-pandemic, we worked very hard to establish a reputation that we were one of the safest places to come and visit, whether you're going to encounter a man-made or a natural disaster. Complementing our excellent first-line responders at the county level, of course, is the fact that we have the Joint Pacific Military Command here that we've often called upon to help us in some of these situations that have occurred. So we cannot lose that reputation. And you're right, all it takes is one headline. Back in the mid-90s, I was on the Honolulu City Council, and I recall the Japan Consul General, upon reacting to a crime against one of the Japanese visitors, he said if we didn't do a better job at protecting visitors here, they basically are not going to come to Hawaii anymore. So that's when we first gathered this public safety coalition that I'm talking about, that I'm driving now from the private sector. I was a council member, and we got out in front of that issue to make sure that Japan and anyone traveling here from throughout the continental United States would understand that we take that very seriously. So now we've done a great job during the pandemic to say this is a healthy place to come and visit. We had some of the strictest rules to get in to visit the state of Hawaii. People didn't like that. They didn't like the Safe Travels program, but by and large, it worked. It made sure that people come here with sense that, hey, Hawaii really takes this seriously. And so I don't want to make headway in that regard that, as we welcome people back, and there's still some angst out there about the ongoing concern about the COVID, strains of COVID, that now we lose ground on the public safety front. So this is why we want to get out in front of this issue here, because you're right. It will hurt marketing if they feel they can go someplace else to get their sun, sand, surf, and their spirit of aloha someplace else and not come to Hawaii because we're no longer a safe place to visit.
Let's talk about those rising numbers just of tourism overall. We know that you said that part of the reason this is happening is because these are crimes of opportunity as visitors start to return. How was our spring break relative to what we've seen in years past, and what are you expecting for the summer?
Well, the spring break went very, very well. Some of our hotels were operating like at 90% occupancy. So, and what we had to do was because no one anticipated it, but fortunately, the industry was taking steps to prepare. We launched a campaign called Makau Kau, We Are Ready, where we got everybody together to understand that once we open up, and we did this in late 2020, that we had to be ready to go. So with that happening this past spring break, I think we were pretty good in terms of making sure that whatever we could do for people to come back and wanted to experience the Hawaii that they experienced in previous years was not going to be short shrift by lack of services and the like. Also, during that time, it was very acute, the fact that we were experiencing a labor shortage across the board. So everybody kind of had to get creative. They had to do job fairs. They had to figure out how we can motivate people to come back to work, and especially those who are continuing to think that by staying out of work, that Uncle Sam was still going to send a check. That program was POW. So having had that experience to basically ramp up sooner rather than later, I can tell we are ready for the summer. We know it's going to be a robust summer. And so everyone is prepared for that. But again, when people say that we're already at those numbers pre-19, we're not. We're still running behind numbers like 11% behind what we were in 2019. So we're not there yet, which is a good thing, because I think it's going to take all of us coming together and recognizing what we need to do so that when a visitor comes here, they're not going to feel that there's not enough workers at the workplace or services are being cut. We have to anticipate it's going to happen. So that spring break, that robust spring break vacation for folks that came here was really what I call preseason practice, preseason training to get us to a point now where we're ready to go forward and do all we can to bring people back to work and give them the hours that they're looking for.
I want to dive a little deeper into that labor shortage because, that was one of the concerns. We saw those long lines that happened last year, when Hawaii reopened, so to speak, and there was simply not enough workers. And we continue to see that labor shortage in multiple industries and occupations throughout the state and really throughout the nation. How are the hotels as well as other tourist destinations on island dealing with that? Have we returned to some of those levels? Have those positions been filled? And overall, how do you think that this labor shortage that we're experiencing throughout the country has impacted the industry directly in Hawaii?
Well, let's take housekeeping. Room service. Yeah. There's always been an ongoing debate with some groups in the community that feel that, daily room service is no longer existing. Pandemic changed that perspective, where it's now an opt-in rather than an opt-out. So I don't know of a hotel operating in Hawaii that does not provide daily room service if a guest requests. Okay, it's there. So I really believe that those who try to say that that's not being provided, it's there. In fact, before the pandemic, that particular policy was in effect. I remember traveling. I never had my room cleaned daily. That's because, all I need is a fresh set of towels every day and the like. And I think people like that. Some people want it clean daily and so forth. And if that happens, those adjustments will be made. So again, we're not at the 2019 levels, as some are saying, where they're not getting the hours that they need. We recognize the quality of the hospitality industry, and I'm speaking specifically for the hotels, that they have to give them whether it's restaurants being manned, whether it's valet service being done, whatever it is, they're all doing their best to ensure that that quality experience exists. So everybody's handling it different. Obviously, for some hotels, it's an easier challenge to overcome. Others are still experiencing some difficulties, but the one common goal is we want a quality experience wherever that person stays and whatever resort that they or hotel that they try to stay at any one of our island establishments and the like. It's very different, again, with restaurants. They're still experiencing some shortages. There are longer lines. Sometimes people get frustrated where they see their open tables, but yet they're not sitting people as quickly as possible. So they're dealing with it, and they know that they have to be prepared because of the increasing number of visitors that are going to come. Same thing with the retail sectors and the like. So we have these ongoing dialogues and discussion to ensure that we can get some help in those areas. If government is in a position to help, provide incentives for some of these businesses to compensate for the losses that they have incurred so they can hire folks back more rapidly, we're all for that.
You know, one of the frustrations on the resident side was last summer, it just felt like there was this influx of visitors, and some of them maybe new to Hawaii, didn't really know our ways, if you will, and the respect was not necessarily there with all the people, all of the guests who came. Are you anticipating, what are you anticipating for that to be like this summer? Because that relationship has to work well on both sides. Otherwise, it's hard to extend aloha if you're not having respect coming back. And I think there were a lot of people who felt like it was a different crowd, if you will.
Well, two things have happened. Number one, I think whether it's the airlines or whether it's hotels, we've made that shift to make sure that we're trying to bring folks here that understand that we don't want them just to come to Hawaii and just take from us. We want a quality visitor that understands the importance of our culture, our environment, our legacy. So there's a lot of Malama programs that are taking place within these various establishments, even the restaurants, to encourage that type of visitor. Secondly, the Hawaii Tourism Authority has really made a dramatic shift in destination marketing, management marketing, I should say. And the legislature understands that. In fact, they are willing to fund initiatives that addresses that. So there's a whole totally different mindset about regenerative tourism and ensuring that the visitor that comes here understands that we don't want them to just take. We want them to be quality. We want them to give back. We want them to appreciate what we're all about. So that's happening. I've also been a longtime advocate for government to do more impact fees. I have no problem with that. When I was on the council, we did the Hanauma Bay impact fee back then. And this was in the mid-90s, where we said we're going to charge visitors to use the bay. And we put into a special fund. As long as those monies go back to the ongoing preservation of the bay, I'm really happy to see that's now become commonplace, not just with county parks and attractions, but the state has also implemented that in Diamond Head and the like. That's good, because the local resident will know that if the visitors are going to use these areas here, they're going to also pay for the ongoing maintenance, construction, repairs, what have you. And I think another major step forward that government has taken to ensure that quality visitor is the recent bill that was just signed into law by Mayor Blangiardi dealing with short-term rentals. In 2019, we had 10.4 million visitors that came here. About 3 million or so of them were staying at vacation rentals, many of them illegal vacation rentals. So we weren't getting that quality visitor was coming here because many times they weren't paying all the taxes and fees that we expect, plus of the major impacts it was having in residential neighborhoods. So we have a bill now that I totally support from the standpoint is that we're not against short-term rentals, as long as they are operating in places where they should be operating, and they should be operating in resort areas. They should be competing with the lodging community sector and pay the taxes, pay the fees. But they should really be careful about, again, going into neighborhoods because they make it very difficult for a local resident to have the ability to live and reside and rent or possibly own a place in their own residential area. So this bill really curtails that. It makes it difficult for them to operate in residential neighborhoods, which we support. Those who have a non-conforming certificate that have been existing all these years in those areas, as long as they are now registering, they're in compliance, they're up to date, we're fine. We're fine with bed and breakfasts and the like, but I really believe now we have a real sense of purpose in going forward. So the Department of Planning and Permitting is going to be really under the gun, because now they're going to have to enforce all of this. They have the next 90 days to come up with the rules and regulations. Everybody's going to watching them. But I think there's a real strong sense of cooperation support. There was an 8-1 vote on the city council for this to happen. Mayor Blangiardi actually introduced that bill, and it was supported not just by the hotel sectors, but there was widespread support from the community to make this happen. And then when it comes to the crime front, again, the community has to really participate in that too. We can make it harder for criminals to be out on the street. We can put in all the seeding programs when we do Weed and Seed. But then again, what we're seeing more and more is that the folks that are coming into Waikiki or other areas are coming from other areas or other neighborhoods or districts outside of Oahu. So the community has to really buy into that. At the end of the day, it's the hospitality industry that employs the most people. And we keep talking about diversifying away from tourism, finding another industry. Fine, let's continue to do that. But until we get there, this is the industry has to bring people back to work, keep people working, and we have to make it a safe place, not just for visitors to come here, but for workers to work and for people to live in these areas that are impacted by tourism.
When we're talking about some of the overall numbers and looking at pre-pandemic numbers and where the projections are going for this summer, a lot of people are also saying that the numbers are fairly good when considering the fact that these are mainly U.S. mainland visitors, which means that market has increased. But there is some worry that when the Asian market reopens, that there may be this influx that we simply can't handle when counting the increase of mainland visitors and the pent-up demand from the Asian market. What are your thoughts on how Hawaii will handle some of these Japanese travelers that are expected to arrive, and how Hawaii will overall be able to deal with all of that?
Well, first of all, just because Golden Week is happening soon, we're not going to see the numbers of Golden Week pre-pandemic. 7,000 to 10,000 Japanese visitors a day. It's not going to happen. If you check the numbers, we'll be lucky to get 500, 600, if you will. It's going to take a while because the Japanese government was in a lockdown mode for a long time. They had some of the strictest rules of people traveling out from Japan to visit places like Hawaii and other areas. And when they came back, they almost had to automatically quarantine. So that shift has taken place where now, as long as you are fully vaccinated and have a boost, you can travel to and from without having to quarantine. So that's number one. Number two, it's going to take a while to build up that Japanese travel again. Yes, we want to see it come back. And yes, we're far short of a full economic recovery until international visitors return. So you won't see that happening this year. Maybe 2023 at the earliest of Golden Week, we might see it come back to the 1.5 million visitors from a total year perspective, at least developing that trend going forward. But it's a very important market. I give big props to Governor Ige, who's going to be going to Japan shortly. And that's exactly what he should be doing. That's a playbook out of what Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Waihee would do. And I was the director of DBED. We would go first to the Japanese government, thank them for their past support, and then ask them to return to Hawaii. The Japanese love Hawaii. They tend to be the kind of tourists that we like to see come here because they spend, they circulate, they appreciate our cultural heritage. And at the end of the day, they're the model visitor that comes here. So we want to see them come back. We want to see them add to that mix so that we can have a higher quality visitor spender that comes to our community and contribute to our economy in more ways than one because of their curious nature of appreciating everything that we're about.
I want to ask you, just on a personal note, there's been a lot of speculation that Kai Kahele is going to be giving up his congressional seat, perhaps for a run for governor, perhaps not. Have you thought at all about running for CD2? Could we see an announcement in the cards?
I'm so focused on what I'm doing now. Kai is a good friend of mine. He's going to do what he has to do. I personally think that he's doing a great service for us for being in Washington. And he's kind of coming in kind of late, but at the end of the day, far be it for me to tell someone, don't shoot for the stars, because I've done that in my political career. He's a good man. Certainly, I think if he makes that decision to go, I know there's going to be a lot of interest. But for me personally right now, I'm really focused in bringing this industry back. We've made definite strides. Calls are coming in, people are texting, but it always happens. They always think, what's Mufi going to do next, so forth. I'm just pleased that we are in a good place, and I'm pleased to be working with so many of our collaborative partners because no longer are we promoting our opinions or our positions from the hotel side strictly as a hotel-centric point of view. The airlines are no longer doing it that way. We're doing it in a very collaborative fashion where retail, restaurant, airlines, ground transportation, we're all in this together. And I worked very hard to get it to this place, sir, and I want to continue to maintain that going forward. But that's where I stand as of today.
As we wrap up here, before we let you go, I wanted to just kind of ask how the pandemic has really shaped this industry. Of course, we've heard all the things that you had mentioned and things that we've talked about in the past about just the development and the change in the way Hawaii is being marketed around the globe and all the efforts that are being taken. But more from just a relational standpoint, we've seen many in the hospitality industry here locally come together through various means, through the Safe Travels program, through the various press conferences that have been had at the state capitol. How do you think overall that the pandemic has changed the relationship issued on the hospitality side in this integration that you speak of?
As I said, I think it's been wonderful. I've always said this: every crisis presents an opportunity to do things better. And for us in the industry, it made us recognize, I believe, from the hotel sector more than ever, that we really need other robust aspects of the economy to also experience good results. And that's why I talked about the importance of the retail, restaurant, attractions, transportation, ground transportation, the various small businesses. Everyone feeds off tourism. And until we find that economic diversification initiative that will replace tourism or come close to supplementing or complementing tourism, we still have to figure out how we do this better, how we make it so that people will understand and appreciate that this is the industry that employs the greatest number of people. So that takes a lot of collaboration. That's making sure that it's not always the hotels leading. Sometimes it's retail is going to lead. Restaurants are going to lead. The airlines are going to lead. Small businesses are going to lead. That's how we have to do that going forward. So I think that's the lesson of the pandemic, that we are truly all of this together. And I also say this too, that people can't keep looking at HTA and kind of playing the blame game with the Hawaii Tourism Authority if we're not getting the right kind of tourists here. They're doing a good job of trying to do a destination marketing campaign that makes sure that people understand the importance of our culture when they come here. But it's all of us coming together to supplement that effort. So we're making giant strides with government now, with short-term rentals, with impact fees. I like that. The community too has to come around and be a little more helpful too in this area of crime. If we do that, then we're going to have an industry here that we can all be proud of and say that it's worked for us in the past, and certainly better days are ahead as we go forward.
Fantastic. Great to hear from you this morning. Mufi Hannemann, President and CEO of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association. We appreciate all your insights on so many topics this morning.
Well, Ryan, if you got a couple of tickets left, man, I want to come up there and check out. Go Rainbows. UH volleyball. Yeah.
Well, hopefully a lot of fans will be out here. There's a lot of Hawaii people in LA, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans cheering back home as well. Thanks so much, Mufi.
Well, mahalo. God bless.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Well, very interesting to hear from him. And as we said right at the top, his interview was well timed because there are two big articles in the paper this morning talking about the crime in Waikiki and how his agency, along with others, are working collaboratively to solve it. You really heard Ryan, basically on every topic, this theme of collaboration and wanting to work across the aisle with different partners that don't necessarily traditionally work together, but really trying to bring everyone together to make sure that the tourism balance is where it needs to be, and also that we eradicate crime in this very, very important part of our community.
Yeah, and really a comprehensive view of where we're at and where we've come from to really signal the difference of how the state and how organizations like the one that Mufi Hannemann leads has really evolved through the pandemic. And, he listed off a couple of those things, whether it be impact fees that we are now seeing more and more of, reservations that are needed to go to attractions like Diamond Head that the state has recently announced as well. And then integrating that with Bill 41 that has been signed by the mayor to really crack down on those illegal vacation rentals and really confining that to resort areas. They believe that they are in a much better position to handle this summer influx that is expected with the pent-up demand of travel, which could be a record-breaking year with in terms of certain specific destinations that are now finding their way to the island. So great to hear an update on what's happening there. And just an overall, just the, as you said, collaboration that seems to be happening on all fronts.
Yeah, and the missing piece, of course, with our tourism right now are the international visitors, the East Asian market, specifically Japan. He did note that Governor Ige is going to Japan. We'll be asking the governor about his upcoming travel plans on Wednesday when he's a guest here. And it'll be great to see the Japanese tourists back. You know, Mufi did say that those visitors are really the model visitors in our community. They spend, they follow the rules, and for the most part, they are respectful in the ways that people really want when they welcome guests to our communities. So interesting to get that update. Also, of course, the personal political update. We have to ask because you never do know. He did look at his watch and said, "At least not for now," but that doesn't mean not ever. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. He does sound like, though, that he has a full plate. So we'll have to see if he dips his toe in that race. Unlikely, but you never know.
Yeah, a lot happening on the political front. But one person who is not seeking any, as far as we know, is Governor Ige. And we'll be talking to him, like we said, on Wednesday. A lot of topics that we'll be covering with the governor. Of course, the conclusion of the legislative session, what he feels about some of these measures that have been passed by the legislative branch, and ideas and thoughts on anything that he may consider vetoing in his disagreement with some of the things that have moved through the legislature this session, as well as getting an update on where we're at with COVID-19. There's always a lot to talk about. And the governor is also a very big fan of University of Hawaii athletics. Wouldn't be surprised if we actually see him here on the campus of UCLA at some point if Hawaii makes it to the championship. So looking forward to continuing to bring this show to you, even from the road. We hope to see you right back here on Wednesday at 10:30 for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care. Aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.